Next comes active. So how to be active as an active listener? Use to actively provide verbal and non-verbal feedback to the speaker about your understanding of what is being communicated. Active listening is a skill that can be acquired and developed with practice. However, active listening can be difficult to master and will, therefore, take time and patience to develop. Active listening means, as it suggests, active listening that is fully concentrating on what is being said rather than just passively hearing the message of the speaker. So, there are benefits of using active listening because it builds deep trust. As you cultivate the habit of listening sincerely, you invite people to open up. They can sense that you will not be jumping to conclusions based on superficial details. They also realize that you care enough about them to listen attentively. While building trust takes time, it leads to great benefits such as lifelong friendships and a promise of help in difficult times. Next is broadens your perspective. Your own perspective in the life is not the complete truth of or how everyone else sees it. The way you understand life from your friends and thinking is only one way to look at. Listening to other people's perspectives allows you to look at the life from different perspectives, some of which you may not have thought of before. Next, strengthens your patience. The ability to be a good listener takes time and you need to develop it with regular efforts over time. But as you gradually get better and better at listening, an automatic benefit is that you develop patience. Perhaps the only other person expresses his or her feelings and thoughts honestly where you don't judge. Makes you approachable. As you present yourself as a patient listener, people feel more naturally inclined to communicate with you. By being there for them, you give them the freedom to express their feelings. Next, increases competency and knowledge. Great listening skills make an employee more different or more competent and capable, regardless of their position. The more an individual can get information out of the meetings, the instructions and reports provided to him, the more efficient and successful they will be completing the task. Our listening also builds knowledge and helps fulfill work requirements through progressive learning. Saves time and money. Effective listening not only reduces risk of misunderstanding and mistakes that could be very damaging to the business, it saves time and money by avoiding starting a task or a project over again just because the difference or the objectives given were considered. Employees do not waste precious time and a specific budget allocated to a project. Helps detect and solve problems. As a leader, they should always be attentive to what employees have to say. In the workplace, they are the first ones to spot flaws and come up with suggestions for improvements. Listening to colleagues will help you understand what needs to be changed and work on to retain talent and make improvements. So, next point as far as active listening is concerned, acceptance response. Using an acceptance response is inserting simple verbal utterances or words into the conversation. Non-verbal communication can also be used. This provides a mechanism to communicate that you are listening without interrupting the speaker's flow of thought and speech. Examples we can say, okay, I see, I understand, yes, etc. So, active listening is the master key to effective communication. So, basics are that the sense that we are not being listened to is one of the most frustrating feelings imaginable. Toddlers scream about it, teenagers move out, couples split up, and companies break down. One of the main reasons this breakdown in communication occurs is that listening, like reading, thinking clearly and focusing, it's a skill which we rarely consider to be something requiring knowledge and practice. There is a difference between listening and hearing. We assume that as long as we can hear someone and understand their words that we are listening, hearing alone, however, is not enough. Among other things, we need to comprehend what is being said and why, reflect on intentions, and consider nonverbal communication. Listening is one of the foundation of society. It is what enables us to form meaningful relationships and connections. And yet, most of us haven't thought about how we listen. We all realize that the ability to read requires training. The same would appear to be true of speaking and listening. Training is required. Likewise, skill in listening is either a native gift or it must be acquired by training. So, active listening is a technique for developing our ability to listen. As a communication technique, it is used to many professional settings but is also valuable for everyday life. Anyone who has ever seen a good therapist will be familiar with the efficacy of active listening. A one-to-one therapist will listen with intent, clarify any uncertain points, often paraphrase what is said and ask the speaker to expand. A family or couple therapist will help to resolve a conflict by facilitating calm communication through reflection, open body language, and by helping couples understand one another. The therapist can interpret, advise, provide the emotional acceptance and support that nurtures personal growth, and above all, he can listen, and it can be meant that he can simply hear the other doctor, but that he will listen actively and purposefully, responding with the instrument of his trade, that is with the personal vulnerability of his own trembling self. This listening is that which will facilitate the patient's telling of his tale. The telling can set him free. For the sake of clarity, we will refer to active listening in the context of two people conversing through the article. However, it can occur in communication between multiple people and in groups. The core component of active listening, what we have seen, is the comprehending way. So, we must first understand what the other person are actually saying. This is not as simple as it appears. In most cases, comprehension occurs instantly and unconsciously. However, a number of potential barriers can prevent comprehension. It includes language barriers, the use of jargon or slang, difference in culture, age, social rank, and other discrepancies between people. So, responsiveness is one thing, retaining or to respond in an appropriate manner. We must understand and retain what the other person has said. No, not everyone will retain the same details. So, some people recall very specific details while others hold on to the general ideas. It is common for us to only retain details which are relevant for our response. When actively listening, we focus on the other person's words rather than thinking about what we can say next. Suppressing our ego is difficult. It is as if we think we already know what the other person is going to say, and we fool ourselves to think that that we have done the work, that we not only know what the other person will say, but that is we have thought about it before, only we haven't. There are a number of potential barriers to retention, or including cognitive biases and selective listening, distractions either internal or including company, and issues with memory such as dementia is a problem. So, that is issues with memory. Next, Conversations are active and not passive. A conversation between people cannot occur without a response. Active listening, response, careful responses, which are made possible with comprehending and retaining. An active response should show that we understand what the other person has said, have paid attention to their words, and also read their non-verbal clues. Ronald A. Herfres writes that the activity of interpreting the activity of interpreting might be understood as listening for the song beneath the words. To be an active listener, we must try to go beyond the words and form a rich pleasure of the other person's emotions and intentions. However, we must also avoid inventing meaning or coloring their words with our own thoughts. The same potential barriers apply to responding as to retaining and comprehending. So, active listening requires an understanding of how cognitive biases and shortcuts impact our communication. These are particularly prevalent when people are arguing and disagreeing. Consider the hypothetical argument between a couple and responding to one which can easily disagree with.